fellow Falcoholics, what is up? Welcome to episode 132 of the Falcoholic Live. I'm your host, Kevin Knight at Falcoholic Kevin, joined by some wonderful co-hosts and a special guest this evening. First of all, let me welcome him. He is Will Mcfadden at Will Mcfadden on Twitter. Will, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing all right. Not too bad. At least I didn't have half my hair cut off today.
Well, there is that. Yeah. You know, we should all count ourselves very lucky that we didn't have to go through that particular trial by fire. But
yep.
I for one have, pledged not to cut my hair until I'm vaccinated for COVID. So it could be a while longer. Yeah.
Same here. Today was like proof of that concept working. So I'm glad that I made the right decision 9 months ago.
Good call there. Also with us tonight, Evan Birchfield. He's on Twitter at Evan Birchfield. Evan, how are you tonight?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me here, Kevin.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, man. And also with us, Eric Robinson at _Eric_Robinson on Twitter. Eric, how are you?
Oh man, I'm doing pretty good, and it feels good to have Will on the show, man. You know, he's a very popular name around Falcons fans and Falcons, I guess, readers or whatever. Yeah, he's a well-known guy, so it feels good to have him on here tonight.
Yeah,
appreciate that.
Yeah, for some reason I thought you had dark hair, Will. I don't know where I got that from, but
it comes and goes. You know,
he probably did. You know,
it changes with the seasons. You know,
it definitely does, and depending on the light, it'll either be. It sometimes even looks red. My beard will look really red sometimes, but I always say I'm blonde, so I'm glad that it looks blonde on camera right now.
It does. Yeah, I also have a few like red hairs in my beard, so if you catch it at like just the right angle, sometimes it'll look red, but usually it's not.
I have gray hairs.
Yeah, I have a bunch. The camera, like the lighting I have in here, really covers it up well. But there's a bunch of gray hairs. There's like a ton of gray hair, guys. I don't know if you can see that, but guys, we are going to talk Falcons tonight. I promise. This is a Falcons show. This isn't the hair episode. We saved that for the dead zone of the off season. But welcome to our usual suspects, guys. If you haven't already liked and subscribed, please do that. We appreciate that. It helps other folks on the YouTubes find us. So today, guys, we're going to be talking about some of the recent coaching staff hires. We got 2 more today to talk about. We're going to get some of Eric's finest takes from the Senior Bowl. He was there in the flesh, collecting those great scouting notes, giving us those sweet updates. So we're going to get his take on some of that stuff. And then we're going to talk about the most recent rumblings regarding the salary cap. So the new projections that are expected to be announced, I guess, at some point this week. And also Falcons free agency situation, and of course your questions as well, so feel free to throw those in and we will try to get to as many as we can throughout the evening. So I think I would like to hear about the Senior Bowl from Eric first, so we'll get started with that. But yeah, Eric, I know you were there all week. Just tell us a little bit about how that was. I think Will Mcfadden said he had been there in the past as well, but Eric, how was that? I think this was your first time.
Yeah, this was my first time, but I can easily tell that, everything that they put together this year was, well, not everything, but a lot of the Senior Bowl that was put together this year was different from years past. One thing that was noticeable, of course, pretty much media was confined to one particular section of the stadium. Normally in years past, they'll be spread out, they're out and about, whatever, but this year we were pretty much placed on one side of the stadium, and we were told to social distance as much as we can, of course. So outside of that, man, I got a little bit of everything as far as weather goes. You got some sunshine, got a little bit of rain, definitely some 10 to 12 mile per hour winds also later during the week. So you got a little bit of everything.
It gets so windy down there in Mobile.
It does. Yeah.
So windy. It's wild.
Last 2 days, the wind would not stop. And you saw it, it affected a lot of guys, especially the quarterbacks on the field. But being there was, I was like a kid in the candy store. You know how much I love the draft, Kevin.
Oh, so, yeah.
One thing for sure, when you're there, though, there's so much going on at once that it's kind of hard to focus on just one particular position, because you'll have linebackers down here, defensive ends in another corner, corners here, running backs here, quarterbacks over there, offensive linemen. So it's so much going on that you kind of just have to bounce around from position to position. But I was able to get some good information there, and a few guys definitely stood out for me. especially on the defensive side of the ball, because we all know that's where the Falcons need the most help. But one guy that really, was very stellar throughout the week was Richie Grant, free safety out of UCF. He came in with the reputation of being a ball hawk, of being that type of playmaker on the back end that is always around the ball, and he showed that reputation throughout the week. You look at him in individual drills, not the most athletic guy. He's not the biggest guy. Probably not going to run a 4.4. It's probably going to be a 4.5. But the guy just knows his way to the football. I even went out on a limb. To me, leaving Senior Bowl, he became a top 40 player for me. That's how good of a week he had. The last day of practice, he picked off Jamie Newman twice. And I'm pretty sure Georgia fans will love that. And he was placed everywhere: slot corner, boundary. One of the interceptions that he had, he was actually matched up one-on-one with Kadarius Toney, who inside the red zone. Toney ran a quick slant. He read it perfectly and cut underneath Toney and made the pick, and it was beautiful. But he stood out. Dalen Hayes out of Notre Dame was another guy that stood out. Dalen Hayes, just as far as NFL frame, he looks ready. Okay, he's every bit of 6'4", 260, and he was dominating down there. Guys at certain points, offensive tackles could not get their hand on. I mean, he shows some bend, slippery for a big defensive end, for a big edge rusher, but he had a very impressive week. Hamza Nazardeen out of Florida State was a guy that kind of stood out for me as well. I figured coming into this week, he needed to be one of the best players on the field, simply because of the fact that he missed all of the 2020 season, all except 2 games.
Right.
So this was kind of sort of a launching pad for his draft season. And he started off well, very aggressive, played some box safety, played some single high safety. But I think he's better closer to the line of scrimmage, of course. So, depending on what the team does with Keanu Neal this offseason, I think Hamza is a guy to keep an eye on. 6'4", 222.
Yeah, he's big.
He's a big dude. And he can move. Change of direction is not that bad. He struggled one-on-ones against big receivers, but you kind of sort of expect that from him. I want to know, how does he move against tight ends, running backs? That's what I want to know. I don't care how he moves against Amari Rodgers. I expect Amari Rodgers to take his lunch money when it comes to that.
And that's how he's going to be used in the NFL. He's going to come in and play that typical box safety role. They're going to put him in the slot against some tight ends. If a team's going 4 wide, maybe he's the guy on a running back. If you've got somebody like Deion Jones, who maybe you feel better about sliding out onto a wide receiver. So I like that he was able to demonstrate at the Senior Bowl, the ability to play much closer to the line of scrimmage, because that's probably where he's fitting in the NFL.
Yeah, he's just going to be a chess piece at the NFL. I don't even think he's really going to have much of a position. Honestly, they're just going to put him wherever they need him to be, depending on matchup. On the offensive side of the ball, everybody is focusing pretty much, in large part, especially with Arthur Smith in play. Everybody's focusing on the running back position. All eyes were on Najee Harris, of course. Throughout the entire week, I think Najee had 3 carries. I'll be honest. He dressed. He was on the practice field, but the guy carried. I think I counted 3 or 4 carries, and you can tell when he toted the rock. You can tell everybody started holding their breath, because you just wanted to see him do something spectacular, but he didn't do anything but just a simple.
They may have been holding their breath for an entirely different reason.
Well, yeah, right. His agent might have been holding his breath, because his agent didn't practice at all, but he did his own thing, because he's not there where he wants to be. But the best running back on the field was Randre Stevenson out of Oklahoma. I think, just in terms of draft stock, he improved from being a 6th-round pick to, I think he can really creep into the bottom half of the 3rd round because of what he did in Senior Bowl.
Yeah. And shout out to the chat. Because the chat was all over Randre Stevenson for I know there was 2 or 3 people in the chat that were just all over Stevenson. So shout out to you guys.
Are you giving him a late third round grade, kind of factoring in also the running back value?
Yeah.
Because we had one running back go in the first round last year. So let's say something similar happens this year.
Yes.
Still bottom of the third round?
Yes. Okay. Because of the fact that he checked so many boxes throughout the week. He looked good in pass protection. He looked good coming out of the backfield. I don't think I saw him drop a pass. Certain runs, he showed some bursts in the open field, able to accelerate at the second level. He's not going to be a guy that's going to win foot races, but if he's able to get a crease, I think he can make a simple carry into a 20, 25-yard run. He's 220, and he runs like it. He's shorter, of course. He's 5'10", 5'11". So he has that stocky build, but you feel when you factor in the concept of him playing at Oklahoma and not really having a whole lot of wear and tear on the tires, he's fresh for being a senior at this point. I mean, he wasn't really deemed the man at Oklahoma, so he never really had those large carry seasons. So he's pretty much going to come into a situation, pretty fresh. There was one point, I think it was day one, just to show how tough he was. He got a simple carry up the middle, came off the hip of the right guard, sprinted through the second level, got to midfield, stopped, took his helmet off, threw up, put his helmet back on, and went back to the
okay.
I was like, man, you know what? That's
what a trooper.
It's Senior Bowl week, man. You got a lot on the line here. That guy was like, hey, let me get this out real quick, and I'm going back.
Yeah, sorry. This is my chance to get reps. I'm going back.
Yeah, right. So he looked pretty solid. Michael Carter looked really good as well. Receivers, I love Sage Surratt. Living here in Charlotte, the Surratt name is royalty around here. That's like the royal family of Charlotte, honestly. His brother was there this week too. His brother looked really good. But Sage, 6'2", 215, the guy can catch everything that you throw towards him. It doesn't matter. He makes every contested catch, or he will at least go up and make every contested catch. His problem, he can't separate. And the couple times he did separate, it was because of a blatant push off. I mean, it was
gotta get a little better at selling that,
It wasn't the Kevin. It wasn't like the chicken wing concept where you kind of use the elbow to
yeah.
No, it was full get off,
full extension. Oh man, somebody's got to coach him up a little bit on that. Yeah,
you got to coach him up with that, but. For fans that want, because last year we saw it in the receiving core outside of Julio Jones, this receiving core had trouble making those type of catches, those contested one-on-one grabs down the field. Sage will answer that. Sage will definitely do that. Amari Rodgers looked great as well. That guy's going to be a 10-year player in this league, man.
Yeah, I was impressed with him for sure.
Who else? Oh, offensive line, man. Quinn Miners.
Yeah, it kind of came out of nowhere. Yeah.
The guy made some money, all right?
Yeah.
I absolutely love the fact that he crop topped his jersey the entire week, had the gut hanging out. I get it, man.
That's a power move, yeah.
He plays in Wisconsin, so it's 40 degrees in Mobile. This is like spring weather to him. The guy was probably warm. That's why he crop topped his jersey. Mm-hmm. But he has some one-on-one drills against Marvin Wilson, Patrick Jones from Pittsburgh, the defensive tackle out of Washington. I can't think of his name right now. But he won those one-on-ones. He pancaked guys left and right. And usually the Senior Bowl is a stage where you see these D3 guys kind of take that step. Ali Marpet was one a few years back that was able to use the Senior Bowl to get him drafted on day 2. I think Quinn Miners was that guy.
And that's really what the Senior Bowl is about. Like last year when I was there, everybody was kind of watching Javon Kinlaw, and you're totally spot on, Eric, about everything's happening all at once. So you either have to kind of pick your guy, or what I used it for was really just to try to get information from the people who have been watching college football. Like their job is the draft, and just kind of be like, all right, who are some guys that we're not all talking about that we want to know about? Right. But obviously, Thomas Dimitroff was a big fan of finding those guys like John Kaminsky who would be there in like the 5th round, who maybe wasn't on their radar at a huge level previously, or they couldn't afford to send a scout to maybe see one of his games, but they could see him there. Somebody like Javon Kinlaw, who I just brought up, like, all you're going to do is solidify your spot as a top 10. You're not really going to jump much higher. You're probably not going to fall much based on the Senior Bowl. So, when you talk about like Najee Harris, he doesn't need any carries in that game at all. Everything that he's done at Alabama in national championship games, all of that stuff speaks so much, louder than anything that he would have done during this week. But like you said, it's the opportunity for those guys, D3. Okay, now you're going up against an SEC corner. Yeah, it may not be the top tier SEC corner, but it's definitely a jump in level, or somebody who sat out all of this year and came back. That's why, like, Jamie Newman, to me, I'm curious to see where he goes now in the draft, because you kind of sat out the whole season. So don't give him to us, Georgia guys. He's not a Bulldog. We'll let Wake Forest keep him.
He actually donned a Wake Forest helmet this week.
Oh yeah. See, he doesn't even want us. We're Tiger Cut.
Oh man, yeah.
But like, did he go from being maybe like a 4th round guy to, is he 5th, 6th round based on that game, because he doesn't have that season?
Yeah,
so he
doesn't have the tape.
The week started off like he was a rusty quarterback. You can tell he missed the year.
Which he should have been training for this week all year.
Yeah, he should have been. Along with the fact that, hey, he's got a receiver. He's never thrown passes to these guys. He's never thrown passes to him or Kadarius Toney. So it took him a little while. Once day 3 came around, I know that the 2 picks from Richie Grant is one thing, but that's Richie Grant. That guy is just a playmaker. He started to come around on the practice field a little bit. It took him a little while. And I think this was a critical week for him for that aspect alone. Like you said, he missed an entire year. So I think his last live game was like over 400 days ago or something like that.
He was somebody coming into the game, because again, I went down there this week. I wanted to see like him particularly, because obviously like there's a big 1st round group of quarterbacks. But then, if you're not really sold on a Mac Jones, who's probably there late 1st round, but if you're not sold on a Kyle Trask, if you're not sold on Sam Ehlinger, any of these, like, it gets real murky there in the 3rd, 4th round. If Jamie Newman had come out and put together a pretty good performance, maybe he jumps up to the top of that 3rd tier of QB guys. Yeah. And I was wanting to see that for him. And I did not.
There was no clear cut guy at quarterback this week.
No.
This was clearly the 2nd tier and 3rd tier of quarterbacks in this year's draft. And none of them really walked away from CBO saying like, hey, he was the best quarterback this week. Everybody had their issues. Mac Jones had his issues early on. One thing about Mac Jones that kind of bothered me a little bit early in the week, man, his cadence was like he's whispering. It was really low. Like put some tone, some pitch behind it. Get your cadence out. And you saw he actually started to do that later in the week. But he had some struggles. Kellen Mond had some struggles. Sam Ehlinger had some struggles. Sam Ehlinger had trouble getting the ball out, getting some velocity on his short throws. That's not going to go well.
You heard it here first. Eric Robinson says Mac Jones has leadership question marks.
So there you go. Yeah, making news here on the Falcoholic.
The thing is, I towards the end of the week, I like what I saw from him. He's whoever has him as a top 10 pick, you guys got to stop doing that, man.
Got to stop with that, please. Yeah. At least it's not Najee Harris at 4. Okay, I had to spend all day fighting that off. But
with the PFF, somebody had him going 4th overall to Atlanta. I can remember.
Yeah, PFF is in love with Mac Jones. Like they think he's better than a lot of the other quarterbacks.
So, what do you think? His stock went up or down?
I don't think it changed.
I don't think it changed. Yeah. I don't think it changed.
So where do we think his stock is?
I still think I think he's going to end up going in the 1st just because, but I don't think he should.
I think he's 2nd round. I think he's actually on the Falcons' radar in the 2nd round, but I would not be surprised if the team kind of pulls that trigger late 1st round on him. Because we see it all the time, guys. Early on, a quarterback run is going to happen. I don't know if it's going to start. I mean, I know of course Trevor going first overall is probably going to happen. We'll see what the Jets do. We'll see if someone trades up to number 3 and take a quarterback there. But it's going to happen, and I think a quarterback run is going to probably push Mac Jones into the bottom half of the first round. But I'm still keeping my fingers crossed a little bit. I actually have him in our mock draft that I'm putting together. I have the
Falcons okay, a little spicy, non-top 4 quarterback for the Falcons. Okay.
But I will put this out there. There's also a trade that I forecasted as well.
Right. Okay. That's fair.
I'm just sitting here trying to think of like who would that team be in the back end, because that's the thing that I think sometimes gets missed in a lot of stuff, and it's something we would talk about inside of the building. Is like, okay, everybody wants to give up 4 first-round picks for Deshaun. Well, what's the team that's going to actually do that? That's kind of in a place that you got to have you got to have another partner to really make that happen. So is there a team kind of in that 24 to 32 range who was in the playoffs or just missed the playoffs? Or, I mean,
Pittsburgh was there too.
Yeah, I mean, I would say
maybe like Minnesota or something.
Indy, Chicago.
I mean, is New Orleans in a chance to maybe do that?
I'm going to say New Orleans as well.
For Mac Jones?
Why not?
Or for Deshaun? I'm confused. Are we talking about Mac Jones or Deshaun? For Mac Jones, sure.
Oh, I'm talking about Mac Jones. No, not Deshaun.
Yeah, I was about to say, New Orleans could be $130 million over the cap before we're done with this conversation.
So Pittsburgh, Indy's at 21.
Yeah, that's a little early, but
it's early. But look at their quarterback situation right now. Like, they obviously need a quarterback.
Well, they'd be a team I would look at maybe trading up if one of those kind of top 4 guys, like, could Trey Lance be on their radar if he's at 12?
Yeah.
Because they've got such a good roster everywhere else that if they can they may be willing to, Chris Ballard may be looking at it saying, we don't need all of this capital. We need a guy behind center.
Yeah.
Because they have a really talented roster everywhere else that they've built through the draft. So I don't know. It'll be a weird draft year.
It's going to be crazy.
And you thought that Chicago may be in that situation as well. It's kind of up in the air as far as what they may do. I mean, will they trade up? I don't know. I mean, there's priorities, of course. Allen Robinson is a free agent this offseason. I expect them to re-sign him and bring him back, but that's not a guarantee, to be quite honest with you. But what the big question with that team is, what are they going to do with Trubisky? So basically, the Falcons are going to have plenty of suitors at 4.
Yeah.
If they're comfortable with taking a quarterback, their phone is going to be ringing. It just depends on, what the new regime wants to do at that position.
Well, and you say there's going to be a run at quarterback, and I think that will definitely be in the top 5 because and I've yet to really, really dive deep into the draft. I was planning on kind of doing this past week and moving forward, and things kind of got a little haywire.
A little hairy there. Yeah.
A little hairy. But I'm not super impressed with the kind of top tier talent in this year's draft at, I guess, the positions that are most likely to make an early on impact. Yes, you've got guys like Micah Parsons, but like who's that next like true impact linebacker behind him? I don't know if there's necessarily a guaranteed bona fide first round pass rusher. I know everybody likes Russo, but like I don't know if I'd be willing to gamble a first round pick on him. So
huge gamble. Yeah.
I think the quarterback position is probably the most talented at the top. And so I would be like, I did a Pro Football Focus just mock draft for fun and kind of did what I think all Falcons fans are doing. And it's because I think of the exact reason that I just laid out. If we're not necessarily sold on, is there a quarterback that can take over for Matt Ryan and be the face of the franchise for the next 12, 13 years? And there could be somebody in this draft. There's, somebody in 2 out of every 3 drafts that kind of can be a guy. But do people, are they sold on Zach Wilson? Are they sold on Justin Fields? If not, they might do what I did, where I traded back to 7, traded back again to 10. And for whatever reason, PFF had Penny Sewell there. And I was like, all right, I'll take you. Like that's value there.
Yeah.
And then I picked up, this was before obviously the Senior Bowl, but I picked up Jamie Newman in like the 4th round. I was like, all right, we'll just see what you can do. So I get exactly what you're saying, Eric. And I think that there will be I think there will be trade suitors there for the Falcons at 4.
Oh, yeah.
But again, like you said, Kevin, we don't know what Arthur and Terry want to do with this.
Absolutely not. Yeah. And I don't think they're going to make it clear, obviously.
No, that's one thing. Yeah. Terry made that part very clear.
Yeah.
You guys have their poker face on. I see it already. But I want fans to understand, because a lot of them believe that, if they go for a quarterback at 4th overall, that, it spells, the near ending of Matt Ryan. They're pretty much going to move on from him and stuff like that. I want fans to understand that just because, even if they were to stay put and take a quarterback at 4, that does not necessarily mean the Matt Ryan era is over. I think you saw it yesterday. The reports came out that said the team is pretty much going to, stand firm with Matt Ryan and Julio going forward, which I believe they should do. But I do think it's legitimately on the table. This is a new regime that we're talking about. They're not tied to the hip. They didn't draft Matt Ryan. They didn't give Matt Ryan his contract. So they're not committed necessarily to Matt Ryan for the next 4 or 5 years. And this is a new regime that wants to build their new direction. And this is an opportunity in the top 5 to get a franchise quarterback possibly. These opportunities don't come often. And Fontenot can tell you that from experience. I mean, when the last time the Saints have drafted that high, to get their guy. So, I mean, it's just, I don't think it's completely, I don't think it's a guarantee that they're going to take a quarterback. I don't think it's a guarantee that they're going to stay at 4. I don't think it's a guarantee that they're going to trade down. I mean, anything can really happen, but I really want fans to understand that they need to go into draft night. Just keep an open mind, because literally with this team, with this new regime, they can go in several different directions. So,
they need to go into draft night just excited, because it will be first off the earliest night that we've all had in a while.
Yeah.
But Atlanta is really the first team in kind of that maybe power position. If you think Miami's going to take Sewell there at 3, I mean, I guess you could say Miami's kind of the first team in that power position, but because Atlanta can go so many different directions, and it, like you said, Eric, it all comes down to how does this new regime evaluate what they've got on the roster? I mean, keep in mind, they're still right now signing their assistant coaching staff. I mean, they've yet to really get the guys in the building who are going to be directly coaching these players. Right. I think there's a couple of ways that they could take this. Either they look at what they have, they say, this team has the talent to compete. They were not coached properly. They were not properly motivated. Whatever the culture wasn't right to get the most out of the talent here, but on paper, this team's not as far off as they were last year.
Right.
If that's the case, then maybe you look at what is a position that we can truly upgrade here at number 4, and maybe we don't use that on a player that won't feasibly see the field in 2021. And that's where you maybe start looking at like Micah Parsons. I know that, again, the linebacker group wasn't the problem last year for Atlanta. So that's a little bit of, adding some riches, but I think that that's one option that they could take, or that's when you pick up value and you say, all right, let's move back to number 12. Let's get a guy that we think will be there. If it's Kyle Pitts, if it's whoever, add, 3 picks in the draft and kind of just shotgun this. The other way is that they sit there and say, no, we're actually a little bit further off. That 4-12 record was pretty spot on. We're 2 years away from feasibly kind of being back in that mix. Let's go ahead and take the quarterback of the future here in year 1, give them a year, ride it out, see what we can do. Maybe we can turn something out of nothing because we've got a veteran group. But I would hate that for Matt Ryan. The thing knowing him and having to have that, he's way more competitive, I think, than people realize, because he is such a kind of statesman when he talks to the media. But the moments where he says, like, get the fuck off my field. Sorry, I don't know if I'm allowed to cuss on this, but but those are the moments that you see when you're just kind of standing on the hill at Flowery Branch watching him conduct practice. The dude expects everybody to compete to his level. I think that my biggest issue with the last kind of 4 years is I think that everybody got a little too comfortable, maybe inside of that building with who they were around. I think that the best teams have healthy amounts of turnover in the locker room, and they bring in guys who are fresh, who are hungry. Guy like I listen to the Chris Long podcast a lot. He's a guy that you add to a team because he had a high pedigree, but then you bring him in as a role player and he comes in understanding his role as a veteran, add that to the Eagles team. Then they draft a defensive end in the first round. He's extra motivated, but he also knows he's here to kind of build for the future with those guys. I just don't know if they had enough Adrian Claiborne types, Brooks Reed types. Once they moved on from those guys, I just think things got a little bit stale.
They were complacent as a team, as a whole. They were complacent. They were comfortable with saying, "Hey, our guys are going to grow up. They're going to make plays at some point. It's going to happen." Instead of, me having a military background, the one thing that the military teaches you is that you always need to have a plan A, B, C, D, and E, because you never know what can go wrong. And I think that was the issue with, the previous regime. They had a plan A, but a plan B was non-existent because they truly believed plan A was going to work. They didn't really try to bring in any competition for Tack and Vic Beasley because they held firm and said these guys are going to mature and they're going to be able to rush the passer. And I think that's probably why neither one of them really, their work ethic wasn't up to a standard.
I mean, I don't know if it's like exactly. I mean, clearly I agree with you, Eric. We've had this conversation many times about the failure to properly challenge Tack and Vic and to just kind of pray that they were going to. And like this part of the problem was like, okay, the first time, these are 2 first-round picks going into their 3rd and 4th seasons respectively or whatever it was. So you're banking on them taking that next step and being your 2 pass rushers. It's like, okay, like that's reasonable. But then it was like the next year after they did not do that. And it was like, let's just run it back. We're going to run it back again. Okay, this time it's going to work. Now that we've given Vic Beasley all this money, now he's definitely going to play better. And, as expected, that did not pan out. So, that was not a great strategy. But it seems like it was almost like they had too much faith in themselves. Like they had too much faith that these players were going to develop and that the plan was going to work and like we're going to coach these guys up. And I think they got a little too high on themselves from 2016, where they had this miraculous draft class where everyone came in and started playing at a high level. Everything went right. They'd almost went to the Super Bowl. And then they were just like, let's just do this again. Like, let's just have this miracle draft class again. Like, we're going to develop these guys and we're going to do this and that. And then it just doesn't work. And then you end up in 2020, 4-12 with a new staff. So,
which is why when Arthur Smith, says everybody's going to be held accountable, best players included, like that's the message that you could see Arthur Blank really buying into, because it was almost probably an issue with self-scouting at some point after that 2016, 2017 season, where they said, okay, we have an identity that we think can be plan B and C. If plan A is not working, we just trust our guys to go out there and make plays more than the other guys. And I think that was probably a little bit of a lack of self-scouting early on when they looked at 2016. Okay, how did we really get here? And it's looking more and more like the answer was Kyle Shanahan and the offense that he was able to run, coupled with just some great seasons from a good core of veteran guys. Yeah.
And this is a good topic, actually, good timing with Keenan Forney joining us now. Keenan, how are you doing tonight, man?
Good. What's happening, y'all? What's up?
Yeah, man. Thanks for joining us. We appreciate that. We were just talking about some locker room dynamic stuff, which I'm sure you have more experience than any of us with. So we were talking about, back in 2018, 2019, the team was kind of banking on Vic Beasley and Tack McKinley in particular, just kind of working out. And they didn't really bring in a lot of veterans behind them, a lot of guys to either push them or help mentor them. And that it seemed like just the team was a little bit too confident and that the locker room just kind of had some kind of issue, whether that was too much confidence or not enough competition or too much complacency or whatever. But you've been in a lot of locker rooms. What is your kind of take on that scenario, having maybe too much faith in the young guns and not enough veteran presence there?
Well, I mean, I got to tell you, how do I say this, man? I applaud Dan and those guys for putting that faith into them, but, if it's me, I'm running a team, I'm going to get some veteran backups that have been out there and played just in case, for insurance, for anything.
Yeah. Yeah. And they did do that at times, right? Like they had Dwight Freeney at one point. They had Adrian Claiborne, Will brought up Brooks Reed. Like at times they did have guys, but it seems like they ended up going away from that, and they have like this year they had Steven Means, who's a reliable veteran as well, but they just kind of went in a different direction and it didn't end up working out for them.
No, when I say a veteran backup, I guess maybe I'm not thinking about somebody that's a 2. I'm thinking about somebody that could be a 1 somewhere else. You know what I'm saying?
You got to hold them accountable. There's got to be that accountability where they're afraid if they're not performing or competing throughout the week up to the level that they need to, there's a guy right on my heels who can do this job, and then I'm the number 2 eventually. And that was the issue where they didn't have it with Vic and Tack. Those guys were so safe in their roles as 1s that you could just see a trend of complacency kind of carry on. And when the production wasn't there on the field, there was probably never a fear of them truly losing their job, despite the kind of the talk of, well, we need to see more from them. We need them to step up. We need more production. And when you see Raheem take over, you then see guys like Jacob Tuioti-Mariner. You see Charles Harris. You see these guys who are much further down on the depth chart get those opportunities, and they're producing. So I think there was just a little bit of a too safe mentality with the guys that you needed to really step up week in and week out. And that probably fed into why they weren't.
Right. You can never, what I'm saying? Athletes, they need that competition or else you will get complacent. You know what I mean? Like, they all want to do their job at a high level, but you can't get complacent. I know, there was times when they bring somebody else in the room or whatever, it kind of, makes you sit up a little bit like, oh, okay, it ain't sweet around here. Let me, get on my shit, because this dude could take my job and I might be up out of here, So, it's one of the things where they should have had, like I said earlier, they should have had some guys that could have been pushing for valuable time, because now, if you have a bad game, a bad play, it's not just like, oh, I'll get it. You know what I mean? Now you scared that, oh, shoot, my reps, my plays might start to decrease because I got this guy right behind me chomping on the back of my leg,
Yeah.
I think Keenan would agree that a lot of players early on in their careers, money is a great motivator, but when you actually get it, I think the mindset of players change at that point, because you're not thinking like, man, I got to bust my ass to get more money. Like you're already making, for example, with Vic, getting that 5th-year option. I think using that money as the motivator wasn't the right motivator, because now he's got $13 million in the bank account. The bigger motivator would have been, okay, you get your 5th-year option, but if you don't, do what you're supposed to do, this guy here that can be a number 1 on other teams is going to eventually push you out of Atlanta and cause you to miss your next contract, because
because that happens with first round picks, man. Some of them come in, they get their bread already, and they kind of kick back and good.
Right.
And to be clear, I think that was a bigger issue with Vic. I think Tack had a rough go of it at times. At training camp this year, I've never seen a more profound body transformation than what I saw from Tack heading into that. That tells me that the dude kind of got where he was at. I think, and he told us, day one, like I had a realization that I was not going to be in this league if I didn't get kind of my shit together. And he did, to his credit, do everything that he had to do. And then he gets hurt. Like Keenan, that when you're kind of playing through an injury throughout the season, you're out there, you're playing, but if you're playing at 70%, especially as a pass rusher who Tack had worked so much to develop his speed around the outside, if that's kind of gone now because you're dealing with a groin, that's tough. And so I think the Vic stuff was a little bit more a lack of consistent motivation. The Tack's just unfortunate. And then I think we saw his immaturity kind of feed into that, where it got in his own head a little bit. Yeah. But Keenan, I'm also curious about this. Like the backup 1 can kind of be a real motivating factor in the sense of competition. But have there ever been times where you've got maybe a younger guy in your career who you believe can be the future, but you've got kind of that 1B right behind him, where if they're going through a little bit of a down period, instead of using that as kind of the stick, can you use it as a little bit of a, hey, go talk to this guy. He's been through a lot throughout his career. I'm sure he's gone down through that, and use a little bit of a mentor relationship. And maybe you start to give that veteran a little bit more snaps and more reps, but really it's still kind of the young guy's job to lose, but you're letting him learn from the older guy for a little while. Does that happen as well?
Sometimes that happens right before a guy can get signed. They'll tell him, hey, look here, we got our guy, but we want you to come in and push him. You know what I mean? We want you to mentor him. We want you to show him how to go about his daily routine. If you can take his job just because he's sandbagging it out there, then hey, that's one thing. But we letting you know he's our one, but we want you to come in and be that veteran mentor to him, but also push him too.
That's where having that ideal mindset comes into play too, man. Because you're basically telling a guy you're going to be a backup, and we're bringing you in to help elevate him.
But you're bringing those guys in on championship caliber teams, because those guys are going to want to come in and say, "I'll take this role.
Yeah,
I'll be a role player for you guys. I'll help you mentor this young dude. We're going to win it all. You're getting the best out of me. You're going to get the best out of him.
Yep.
And we're going to the playoffs. We're going to the Super Bowl."
Right.
And that's why I think the best teams have that really good mix of veteran depth with kind of young talent that can win you games.
Absolutely. Yeah, because let's be honest, a lot of times veterans, they start getting long in the tooth, 8, 10, 12 years or whatever, they not trying to take all them snaps like that. They want to be as fresh as they can so they can, keep getting them a couple of 1, 2, 3 year deals or whatever, man.
Yeah. I think that's totally fair. And that's the other thing. Coming off of 2015, 2016, the Falcons were a prime destination for free agents. They were able to get guys that they wanted. And then after, several years of this kind of malaise that's been over the team, since 2018, of just not being able to really get it together. 2018 was injuries. 2019 was bad. 2020 was worse. It starts to drain not only on the players that are on the team, but free agents as well. Do I really want to go get involved in this? And look, if we as fans can feel that the end is nearing for a coaching staff, I guarantee you NFL players can feel that as well. So, it makes the whole thing more difficult. And it's sad because it can kind of create this vicious cycle where maybe you're not getting the top free agents, or maybe you have to pay more for them to be competitive. And then a coaching staff that was already embroiled in difficulties is going to have an even harder time because of that. So it's difficult.
I think you just have to have a very clear plan. I think that, because I would use the 2016 offseason as an example. Nobody would really think that Atlanta would be probably a premier place that you want to go, but you utilize the thing you need to turn around was on offense. Kyle Shanahan was a guy that Dan Quinn trusted in, and rightfully so. He knew what he could do. It just turns out that offense was a big diversion from what they had previously run. So it kind of was a 2-year transition for them. It wasn't something Matt Ryan was comfortable with, all that stuff. If you can take that and make that your pitch and say, all right, we're not going to bring in 5 free agents. We just need a couple key ones on offense to really take this thing to the next level. And can we get guys that know this system? And that's when you look around and you say, all right, Alex Mack, Mohamed Sanu. Mm-hmm. So it may not have been very desirable for a lot of people, but if you can make a pitch to guys that Kyle Shanahan had worked with and they knew Kyle and they had seen that offense work, and you can sell them on that, I think that's where, yes, for the most part, guys are aware of what's the deal over there. But just because you're bad one year doesn't necessarily mean that you're out of the free agency race if you have a plan in place for how do we get better for the next year.
Mm-hmm. And it helps when your coaches are well respected. Kyle Shanahan, obviously very well respected around the league. It's seeming obviously it's still very early, but Arthur Smith, clearly a very respected coach if he's able to coax these guys out of retirement. At this point, we're talking about multiple coaches coming out of retirement to join his staff. So even if the Falcons are 4-12, they're clearly not looking like this is not some premier destination where people are expecting to compete for a Super Bowl. But if these guys really respect the coaching staff, I'm sure Terry Fontenot, not a guy I have a ton of experience with personally, but I'm sure he has connections with lots of guys in New Orleans, and he's seen a lot of guys come and go throughout his career. He's got connections. People might really respect him and what he's capable of doing too. So these relationships are key in the NFL, and I wonder if that's another reason the Falcons were able to get arguably the best offensive line free agent of 2016, despite being an 8-18 the year before, is because look, Mac was the last time I was on a really good offense was with Kyle Shanahan. I think I want to do that again. And it was a home run hit. So
And I think he looked at the quarterback situation.
Yeah.
It was just like, you know what? Let's go play with Matt Ryan.
Matt Ryan versus whatever the hell we have going on here in Cleveland. Okay, yeah, I think I prefer Matt Ryan.
Manziel? Was Manziel still there at that time?
I think it was Manziel. Yeah, Manziel was 2015.
Could have been like Brian Hoyer too.
Oh yeah, and the Hoyer, yeah.
I'm curious though. What a former player, is there anything? Does it mean anything different having a veteran coach? You're bringing in a 72-year-old defensive coordinator, kind of definitely on the defensive side of the ball for this team. A lot of guys 40s, 50s, DC's 70. Does that mean anything different for a player as opposed to a young staff? If you're with the Rams and you see Sean McVay and all your guys are 30s, early 40s, is there a different feel in the locker room? Do you maybe trust older guys, or do you look at the younger guys and say they bring in energy, they bring new ideas? Like, what's that like?
With an older staff, I always looked at it like whoever we hired, I'm going to look at their resume. Like you look at Dean Pease and you see where he's been and where he's won Super Bowls. To me as a player, I'm like, oh, okay, man, he put in his work. You know what I'm saying? And let's be honest, he coached back when a lot of these guys were maybe in high school or whatever. So a lot of their favorite players might have been on the defense that he led. He won the Super Bowl in Baltimore?
2012, and he went to a Super Bowl with the Patriots that was the 2007 year. But if he's able to sit down and look, we'll use this as an example, Keanu Neal in the eye and say, all right, Ed Reed did this, so I need you to do this.
Yeah.
You're saying that's going to speak to Keanu.
You know what? I think Keanu, if he was to meet him, he'll, it's kind of like the first time I met Alex Gibbs. I knew Alex Gibbs had been in the league for like 20, 30 some odd years. He coached guys that I used to watch as a kid on TV. So, without trying to act like so much of a fanboy to him, I'd always ask him, hey, man, what was up with Keith Bishop in Denver? And he'd sit there and tell me, and my respect just grew for him just because I knew he had coached, like the Keith Bishops, the Will Shields, some of the, Hall of Famers and whatnot, so I had a tremendous amount of respect for him. I think as a young player, if you come in and you see an older coach and you just look at him as being old or whatever, I think you're missing it because he's seen a lot of football. So that means you get out there in a game, let's say, a lot of teams are going to this spread or whatever now. And now all of a sudden they come out in a lot of 22, 23 packages. You know what I mean? You don't hardly see a whole lot of people, doing that. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it's like now he's been around for so long, he can make the adjustment.
The cycle comes back full circle.
As opposed to new coordinator only used to the spread, so he'd be over there, oh shit, what am I gonna do? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I think having that guy like Dean Pease in the building is gonna spark some change for some of these veterans on the team. I want one guy in particular, if they choose to keep him around, is Dante Fowler Jr. I think having Pease on the staff is going to allow Fowler to look at the game differently because, like you guys mentioned, Pease has had he's had his fair share of pass rushers over the years that he has turned into all pro bowler guys. And I think, if there was ever a time for Dante Fowler to for that light switch to come on a little bit. And I think the time is now. But again, it depends on what the team wants to do with him this offseason.
Yeah. And then on the flip side, I mean, a guy like Dave Ragone is really interesting to me because he's not somebody that I think a lot of fans have ever heard of before. And when you kind of look at his track record and it's, you were in Chicago, you were with Mitch Trubisky, Nick Foles, all those guys. I mean, he was with Jay Cutler for half of the season. Not a ton of success there, but the thing that I'm really interested in and getting the chance to talk to him was he's a former player. He's been around the league for, almost 20 years at this point, dating back to his playing days. So he's been having these conversations. He said Chris Redmond is a really good friend of his, former Falcons backup. So that's kind of how long he's been in this league.
Yeah.
It's that experience as a former quarterback that makes me believe, because Falcons still don't have a quarterbacks coach. I wouldn't be surprised if Dave's kind of the stand-in quarterback coach as well, because we know Arthur Smith. Did they hire London? I know that name was out there. Anyway, I think Dave's going to have a really big hand in the quarterback room because he does have all of that experience and is a quarterback coach by trade. So Keenan, how much does a former player at a position matter to you as a coach? Do you listen any more to them? Are they able to relate to you any better?
Hell yeah, because they know exactly what you're talking about. It's kind of like when I'm training some of these professional linemen. There's certain things I'll say to them that I know that only they don't know about. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And it's crazy how it'll bond you faster because you know what they're going through. You can tell them certain things, to certain ways to play certain techniques that somebody might give you, or give them certain tricks, as you could say. You know what I mean? I always I'm trying to think, who did I have as a former player? I mean, there was a former player. Oh, some of our assistant O-line coaches during the time, I would be able to pick their brains a lot. Like we used to have Chris Dahlman. I think he's at Stanford now or whatever, but he was our assistant O-line coach for a long time, played for the Niners. There's many times we would have conversations. I'd be like, hey, Dolly, man, how should I play this? How should I do that? Whether it be in practice, but especially on game day where I might be having some trouble. And I'll be like, hey, Dolly, man, this is what's happening. He'd be like, hey, try this and try that. Okay, good. I didn't think of that, but and especially thought of it because he's seen it,
Yeah, and with Matt Schaub being gone, I think that's an invaluable move potentially for Atlanta if Matt Ryan's still here, because Matt Schaub's one of the very few quarterbacks in this league who is older than Matt Ryan, who's been in the league longer than Matt Ryan. So
man, Matt Schaub was playing when I was here. He was our second round pick one year.
There you go. So he was one of the few people who could sit there and really say something and it carry weight to Matt Ryan. I mean, you're not going to get Kurt Benkert in a room saying, Matt, why don't you try that? And Nat would never do this, but like you could probably look at somebody in their second year and be like, dude, you haven't even played in a regular season game.
Man, bro, they're saying it a lot worse than that. They're like, man, sit your ass down.
But Matt Schaub's been to a Pro Bowl. So he sits there with a level of expertise, and obviously he's not Matt Ryan, but the dude stepped into a game in 2019 and threw for the second most passing yards in a single game in franchise history. I mean, so that absence I think is a little bit mitigated by bringing in somebody like Dave Ragone, who's played the position before, especially when you've got a veteran quarterback as experienced as Matt Ryan. There's still that level of gravitas where you have somebody maybe saying something to Matt that, Matt will probably give some weight.
Here's what happens is that when they say something to you, they're not just pulling it out their ass.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They're telling you something that either they've seen or experienced before. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of weight that carries with that, man.
Absolutely, yeah. And
they also added TJ Yates, who
that's right.
was with the Falcons for, I think.
Yeah, he grew up in the neighborhood across from me, actually.
Oh, that's
funny. We went to the same high school.
TJ Yates, yeah. That was the hire I didn't know I needed, but since they announced it, I had a TJ Yates hole in my heart that finally has been filled, so... glad to see him back. But quick shout out to Gary Stafford with the $10. He says, thanks guys for carrying us through this long off season. I'm encouraged so far. We are too. Very exciting off season. I think we were all very happy with that. And thanks for your support, Gary. Really appreciate that. Also, reminder to like and subscribe, folks, before we continue. This is a riveting conversation. Didn't want to stop it. So yeah, please continue.
Hey, I wanted to add something. Like the more I'm sitting here thinking about it, man, Dean Pease is going to make Ragone a better coordinator because he's seen a lot of football. Mm-hmm. So they get in them practices. He's going to throw some stuff up at him. You know what I mean? And maybe something he hadn't seen before. And now he's going to have to be like, oh, okay, well, why did you do that? Well, I did that because they get to talking football or whatever.
Arthur Smith as well.
Exactly.
Both of them.
And more than just on the field, they could be up in the meeting room talking or whatever too. Just being around football coaches, you pick up a lot of stuff that you probably never seen or thought of. You know what I'm saying? Like just I get to think about my times coaching in Gwinnett County. I learned a lot from, older coaches that have been around the county for so long. You know what I'm saying? Like you never stop learning as a football coach or a player or whatever, but especially as a coach.
Yeah, same with TJ Yates as well as a passing game specialist. He's gonna have to roll his sleeves back a little bit when he's going up against Dean Pease in practice as well. So one thing that I did pick up from this staff, there's a lot of experience on this staff, man. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of guys that's been in the league for 20, 30, 40 years. But if you look back at Dan Quinn's staff, that was some of his staffs had got first time coordinators, first time coaches in the NFL. You know, I think, of course, I think about Tosh Lapoy last year, the defensive line coach that came in from Alabama. He was one. And, of course, Marco Emmanuel a few years back, first time.
Yeah, Ulbrich too, right?
Yeah, Ulbrich too.
Ulbrich is one of my favorite human beings on this earth, though, and he is a damn good coach.
That's my boy.
If there was one coach we would have vouched for to keep this year, it would have been Ulbrich. You know,
I just know he doesn't really have head coaching aspirations, but I would not have hated seeing him as a defense coordinator. It just ultimately vibes with what does Arthur Smith want to do. And I think Dean Pease, he's obviously worked with Dean Pease before, so he's got that experience. And if he knows what he's getting in Dean Pease, and obviously Dean Pease's track record speaks for itself. So, but I wish nothing but the best in the world for Jeff Ulbrich.
Yeah,
and remember the aspect that I always bring up about first-time head coaches and what is the one thing that they need to do when they get their job? They need to surround themselves with guys that's been around the block.
Right.
And that is exactly what Arthur Smith has done so far. He has surrounded himself as a first-time head coach. He didn't go out and grab a bunch of his buddies and say, hey, I need you guys to join me on the staff. So he got a defensive coordinator that's been around the league he's worked before and been around the league for 20, 30 years. Gary Emanuel, defensive line coach, he's been in the league for like 30 years. Like he's added that experience to the staff, and I think that is going to be key for him growing up. Because I always bring up when Sean McVay started off with the Rams, and I always say the biggest hire he made was getting Wade Phillips in the building alongside him, and I think that helped him become a better head coach.
And it also allowed him to focus on his expertise. Yep. You know, you've got an adult in the room on the other side of the ball who can really handle it. And then you can learn from him. He can say, here's why we're going to do what we're going to do. Check out with you, head coach. Sounds good. You got it. Let's go. And then they work together on game day. And so I think that's an extremely smart hire by Arthur Smith as well. One thing, and Keenan, I'm really glad you actually hopped on, because kind of the two that I'm really interested in from a coaching hire perspective, Dwayne Ledford, Desmond Kitchings. The O-line coach, the RB coach, because I think for the run scheme to work, those two coaches have to really kind of be in sync with how they're teaching the run scheme. And they have a history together. They've been at NC State previously together. So they've got that connection already and probably that verbiage that they use. But it was something, the reason 2016 and 2015, the run game was really good here in Atlanta, and why it's been so good in San Francisco. Kyle Shanahan and Bobby Turner. Bobby Turner has been with Kyle Shanahan pretty much every step of the way, because Kyle knows that Bobby knows his system and knows how to coach it correctly. So Keenan, my question to you as a former offensive lineman, how am I putting too much stock into the kind of O-line coach, RB coach, like how they work in tandem to coach the blocking scheme, the gaps? Where do you read it? Where do you cut it? Am I putting too much stock into that, or does that actually matter?
Not at all. Because usually in the building, the running backs room is right next to the O-line room. So if the running back coach got a question, or vice versa, he's stepping next door. Hey, come look at this. You know what I mean? So they got to be joined at the hip.
Okay.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
So that's something where I would kind of circle that maybe and see how that plays out for them this year, because the run game has been obviously one of the biggest struggles for Atlanta, and everybody looks at what Derrick Henry did in Tennessee. But I'm a big believer that Arthur Smith put and executed a plan in place to really get that run game off the ground. And I think that does start a lot with the offensive line. I think it starts with your tight ends, and then it's kind of your running back, but you got to get them space, and then they've got to hit the right reads, and you got to make the right step. Is it an outside step? Is it a zone step? Is it a downfield step? And that all comes from coaching throughout the week. So
if you got a good old line, even a clumsy ass running back can fall forward for a yard or two. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I can get back there, maybe get 1 yard. If the O-line, if we got all pros out there, maybe even I could get a yard. So.
But I'm just saying, it all starts up front, man. If them dogs up front ain't biting, then good luck.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Hey, I was thinking of another thing too. You guys were talking about just the expertise of the staff. I was thinking that, these guys have also evaluated players for a number of years. So in their evaluation process leading up to the draft, you know what I mean? When they're working out guys, looking at them on tape, that's invaluable, because they'll be able to compare and contrast. Oh, this player reminds me of this guy. You know what I mean? This guy, his capabilities and his limits was this. You know what I'm saying? So I love I was just going back on that. I love the experience part of that.
That aspect is also going to show up in the front office with Fontenot bringing that expertise scouting pro players and him keeping Anthony Robinson aboard, who's been scouting college players for so long. I think that is a unique dynamic that a lot of fans overlook. You guy, Fontenot has scouted college guys over his years. He sat alongside Ireland and Mickey Loomis. I get it. Yeah, he has. But I think he sees another aspect. He sees a lot of experience in that aspect already here in place. So he says, hey, let me bring my dynamic.
A-Rob's great.
Yeah.
And let's see if we can put something together here.
And the guy that they brought over from Washington, that quote that was seen around the world, the thing everybody liked to talk about, the owner hopping off his yacht, Dan Snyder. But
that was a great one.
The part of that really stood out to me was that, Kyle Smith would work with the coaching staff and say, okay, what are you seeing, on draft night? And draft nights can be weird. Every organization's different. You could have 3 guys who can actually make a decision. You could have 15 voices in the room who could have a say in everything. But to have somebody who at least is in that room working with the coaching staff and saying, hey, what are you guys looking for? What do you see? Have you seen, on film, what is it about this guy that really stands out to you? Is that very useful in your system? Is that an important quality to have? That will mean a lot, because back to Keenan's point, almost that those years of scouting are wasted if you don't have a front office willing to listen to them. And some aren't. Some coaching staffs and front offices are miles apart.
Man.
The best ones are the ones that are right here.
Cooking.
Exactly. The best ones are hand in hand. So that'll be important.
It will be. Yeah. I'm very impressed with what stood out to me about the staff and, the personnel side as well is just like, it is a really good mix. Like we have, for instance, on the special teams side, we have Marquice Williams, who's going to be a first-time special teams coordinator, in his 30s. Very promising coach, obviously. But then they brought in Hoffman behind him, who has been a special teams coordinator like for 3 different teams and has all this experience. So it's like, on the defensive side, they've got a lot of really interesting experienced coaches, like, DMP's obviously one of the most experienced coaches in the NFL. And then, Emmanuel as another very experienced coach, and they have a lot of young guys. They have a lot of guys from the college ranks. Like it's kind of a really good mix of younger, newer coaches and experienced coaches.
I think their future DC might also be on the staff already.
Yeah, probably. I know a lot of fans think it's just Matt Pease because of nepotism, but I would say it's probably not Matt Pease. I know that's like the easy one, but it's probably somebody. Matt Pease still needs to work his way up. Okay, like he's not just going to go from quality control to DC in like 2 years. Okay, maybe he's like a prodigy. I don't know, but
I don't think he was brought on board for nothing.
No. He's there to get experience. Yeah,
he was a head coach, right? High school head coach.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
that doesn't mean anything.
It doesn't mean anything.
No, but I'm just saying, like he was plucked from that position and brought to the Falcons as soon as his dad got there. I just reading between the lines, I'm looking at it like more. He's possibly in training.
He's in training, but yeah.
I mean, maybe he's Kyle Shanahan, but we need to see that before those assumptions start being made.
Yeah. We definitely need to see that. But
he's the next Brendan Staley, isn't that what the Chargers
maybe, can't rule
That's
it out.
the way the league going now. Get you a couple years and come on and be our head coach. You can be out there cutting the grass one year and fixing pads and hey, come on in here and coach our team. That's how the league going now.
That's how fast Staley worked his way up the ladder. I mean,
that's true. Yeah.
I didn't even know who the hell he was 2 years ago, to be honest with you.
No, I honestly hadn't heard the name. So, I mean, things move fast in the NFL. So they move fast these days for certain people, I guess I'll say. So, not Eric Bieniemy, unfortunately. So, still can't believe that one, but that's where we are, I guess. But I just.
He's gonna be the next Tony Dungy, man. You remember a long time nobody wanted to give Tony Dungy a job. And then finally the Bucks got him, and then next thing you know, then nobody want to deal with the Bucks for a long time. They started playing Buck ball down there, and it was like, okay, it ain't the creamsicle Bucks no more. All right, that's what's gonna happen with Bieniemy. People keep shitting on him, and he just gonna keep sharpening that razor. So when he gets somewhere, he gonna bust their heads.
Yeah. I got some friends in Kansas City who are flabbergasted that he's not. I mean, they just think the world of him over there. So I'm sure they're happy to have him for another year.
Right. I mean, like, it wouldn't shock me.
He's going to just win another Super Bowl.
Right. Like, it wouldn't shock me if it came out at some point that, like, Bieniemy just was basically told the Texans he wasn't going to take the job or something. But I don't get what the Eagles, like, they just didn't even formally request the interview. It's just wild to me. Like, you're just going to hire Nick Sirianni and not even interview Bieniemy. Like, not even interview him. Like,
I think that I have my own personal questions just with the Eagles' power structure.
Yeah.
And whether or not they would want to coach with maybe that much popularity and kind of somebody who would want that much control maybe to start off with to build things. Because you look at Andy Reid, Andy Reid's got as much control as anybody in that organization outside of the owner.
Mm-hmm.
So you're coming from a place like that. If you're Eric Bieniemy and you're going to say, we're implementing this system here in Philly. Yeah, they've got a pretty powerful GM in place. They've got an owner who is fairly outspoken. Yeah, so I just wonder if they didn't want somebody like that. My question with Bieniemy entering the entire process before it was all, you know, that he never really got a good look, I guess. But if I was an owner making a decision, or somebody like Rich McKay, you know, my big question to Eric Bieniemy would be, and it's probably what everybody else was saying, but like, you've driven a Ferrari for the past, you know, 2-3 years.
Mm-hmm.
I need to know that you can build your own Ferrari here in Atlanta.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because there's a difference in having Patrick Mahomes, Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce, all of that. Like, if you weren't scoring 27, 28, 30 points a game, there would be something wrong there, given the level of talent. And, you know, especially with players like, you know, Mitchell Schwartz and those guys in place, like there really wasn't a true weakness on offense outside of maybe the run game at times, but they didn't need a run game. So I would need to hear a really good, concise, detailed plan from him to say, how are you going to make this replicable here in Atlanta? And so he may have said that to every single team that he went and talked to. I have no idea. He may have the best plan in the world.
Right.
And that would be very unfair. He's not getting any chance, but that's what I would need.
Being that he coached alongside a guy like Andy Reid, I'm pretty sure Andy Reid has at least schooled him on that interview aspect.
But I do think Andy Reid is a singular football mind.
He is.
Right.
So you can learn from Andy Reid. I have a hard time believing anybody else can be Andy Reid.
Yeah. But I think Reid at least told him, like, hey, this being what we have here in Kansas City, this is what teams are likely going to look for. They're going to look for, can you build a blueprint? Maybe not as similar as what we have in Kansas City.
Oh, you mean coaching him up in like the interview process?
Can you build your own blueprint from the ground up? And I'm pretty sure Andy Reid has given him some tidbits on that, on what to look at. I don't buy in. I don't quite buy into the whole thing that he's a bad interview.
No, I think that was planted.
I think that was planted too. But it does go to show you, okay, what was really said in these interviews. If he's to me, he's a better interviewer than a lot of people give him credit for. But what exactly was said? Was it something like Will just brought up, where maybe he was a great interviewer, but his plan didn't really stick. It didn't really entice these organizations enough to say, like, okay, we feel we can give him the keys to the car and he can build this kingdom from the ground up.
I think there's a chance maybe it wasn't even that. It may have just been the fact that you kind of have to ask that question, and there's that inherent doubt. You know, owners can sometimes be finicky. Like they sometimes want what they believe is a sure thing. And if there is kind of that doubt in your mind, where just because they had success and Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes are at the forefront of that success, you know, maybe they're a little bit, gun shy with naming this guy over here, because how do they really know that he attributed to that success? But I also think that people are overthinking this a little bit, where the brilliant thing that the Chiefs did was that they understood Patrick Mahomes' best attributes were his arm strength and his ability to buy some time in the pocket. So what did they do? They went and got guys who could maximize his arm strength. You can only utilize speed to the point that your quarterback can throw the ball. Mm-hmm. If you have a quarterback who can only throw the ball 50 yards, it doesn't matter really if you have Tyreek Hill, because defenses know that the guy's not getting it past 50 yards anyway, so there is a little bit of a cap. Patrick Mahomes can throw the ball 80 yards.
He can throw it anywhere. Yeah.
He can use the entire field. So you have to defend the entire field. So they just went and got Mecole Hardman, Demarcus Robinson, Tyreek Hill. They went and just got small, fast guys who have to make defenses guard every inch of the field vertically and allow Travis Kelce to run these under crossing routes and beat linebackers horizontally.
Just feast.
They're brilliant that they did that, but that's not rocket science.
No. And that's the thing I think people don't get about NFL coaching is like, it doesn't have to be this like 5-dimensional chess scheme to get guys open. You just have to use your players the way they're meant to be used. And that's why Arthur Smith's comments and Dean P's comments about like, look, I don't have just this system and I need XYZ player to make this system work. It's like, what do we have? And then how do we get that into the best possible offense? And that's like, it doesn't sound that complicated, but so many teams don't do this. So many teams are like, this is our offense and this is what we're going to do. And you play here and you play here and you play here. And like, I don't care if you can't run this route well, like this is what we do in our offense and you're going to run this route. Like,
this is so offensive to Keenan. Keenan's like, man, if you only knew how many pages are in a playbook and how many different looks you can have off of one single set.
yeah. I'm sure there's literally a million. I mean, it is silly, but I just really appreciated Arthur Smith's adaptability. Like, I think that's where the NFL is going, is that you don't necessarily know who's going to be healthy on your roster in week 8. Like, you can go into the season with the best intentions, like, you know, oh, we've got these elite 3 wide receivers and we're going to run 11 every play and we're just going to dust teams. And then in week 2, your number 2 goes down for the season and you've got to put your 4th receiver on the field who isn't really the same caliber. And now it's like, oh, well, do we just keep running 11 or do we utilize our other tight end or what do we do? And I think that adaptability is going to be a big difference of Arthur Smith's offense. It might look different week to week, which would be refreshing for a change. But I just really like how committed he is to really taking a look at the roster and building a scheme around his players and not trying to fit square pegs in round holes and just try to make something work because this is the way we do it. So,
or even frankly, I mean, because your offense throughout the season, or not even your offense, your identity as a team throughout the season will change multiple times. And I think back to 2018, when the Falcons took Calvin Ridley, that was seen as a luxury pick that maybe they could afford to make because they were coming off of 2 playoff seasons. They were in the Super Bowl 2 years ago, and they were very close to making it back to the championship game. So even though they kind of needed a pass rusher there or defensive help, Calvin Ridley's on the board, take him. Proved to be a great pick, but then disaster struck and the spine of your defense goes out immediately, kind of in the first 3 weeks. And they kind of never really had a chance because they still wanted to play the type of ball that they wanted to play. I think that not with Arthur Smith saying, you know, we're going to fit the offense and tailor it to the talents of our players. I think the best teams also fit their team identity to realistically, what does their team look like in any given week? And so I would hope that there's also the flexibility there to say, all right, Calvin Ridley's a rookie, but hey, rookie, we need you to step up right now because we need to score 30 points a game. We just don't have the guys on defense we thought we were going to have coming into this. So we're really transitioning, and our identity and attack is going to be to attack in every one of these games. And we're going to come out like we need to score 30 because teams don't always do that. You know, they come out trying to win a 21-17 game. You know, they come out looking at the other side. Sometimes you get into a situation where we can't even afford to think about what they're doing because we got to worry about what we've got to do to win this game. And so I hope that that's the mentality of the staff as well.
Yeah, I think that makes a ton of sense. And it's the same for the defensive side, you know, like he said in his press conference, it's like, yeah, everyone would love to just get plenty of pressure and get 50 sacks with 4 rushers. But like, look, if we need to send 3, if we need to send 6, like we're going to send however many it takes to get to the quarterback. And, you know, that's probably what they're going to have to do. It's probably what they need. I mean, I applaud Morris and Ulbrich. When they both took over, they started to get a little bit more aggressive with the blitzes, and it did help. Deion Jones has a great season as a blitzer, and they have these linebackers and they have these other players that can all blitz. So, let's see it from time to time. We just because we'd like to rush 4 doesn't mean that we can't occasionally send more guys. You don't have to go all the way to Todd Bowles blitz level. You don't have to go that far, but
he's in the Super Bowl though.
He is. So maybe you do go that far sometimes. It depends on the quarterback you play.
I just think quarterback plays too good in this league to always drop, 7.
Yeah. I mean, unless you have really elite guys up front, like if you have, what was it, 2011 Giants up front, like maybe you can rush 4 every time. Maybe that's fine, but that's not going to happen every year. It doesn't come around often.
Definitely a luxury, but given, like Will pointed out, given the way that the game is played nowadays, man, it's just you got to be as versatile as the offense is. There's a team, a good offensive team is not really going to attack you in one particular way. They're going to throw a variety of things and see how you adjust as a defense. So you have to do the same thing. You can't always depend on 4 guys. You can't always depend on 3 guys, which I still think is the worst approach as a defense.
But sometimes you can depend on 4 guys. It just doesn't always need to be the same 4 guys.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
One of the things that I spoke with Dan Quinn, I think 2 off seasons ago, and I basically asked him, it was after the Rams had gone to the Super Bowl, and it was like, offenses are changing so much where they're meant to stress the defense mentally so much before the snap even happens, where quarterbacks are buying themselves half a second because of the mental processing that a defense has to do, because they're running jet motion, because they're running guys back and forth across the formation, and people are having to calculate what's my assignment, what's his assignment, what's their assignment, just on the fly. And so he said defenses have to kind of take that power back, and they have to, when the ball is snapped, now make the quarterback see something totally different than what he saw pre-snap, because a lot of that is meant to give the quarterback the answers to the test. So if you change the test on the fly, now you're making the quarterback have to read stuff where the defense knows what it's doing. So I don't know if they necessarily executed that to the level that DQ wanted them to in Atlanta, but I think that it's not necessarily, we're going to be blitzing every single play. It's sometimes we're sending 4, but we're going to be dropping one of our defensive ends because we think he's got the skill set to do that. And that's what I'm excited to see is, are you going to bring a corner blitz and then you're going to drop, your defensive tackle into that kind of like middle hook zone, and you're going to let your linebackers go to the flat. I don't know.
That's a staple piece. Like you never really know who he's going to send. I mean, he disguises the blitzes so well. And I think that is what's going to help this defense out so much. It allows them to be able to attack in a variety of ways. And again, that's what teams want to do. That's what defenses want to do. Todd Bowles does it all the time, and is great. You can to randomly see JPP drop back in coverage because it was a linebacker blitz was disguised so well. That's one thing that Todd Bowles does that makes him stand out amongst other defensive players. So
yeah. I mean, I do like Todd Bowles. He was someone that I really appreciated. Back in the 2015 cycle. I think he was my choice at the time back in 2015 over Quinn, over other guys. I know a lot of fans were on the Rex Ryan train. That would have been an interesting choice, but I think we dodged a bullet there. But I'm just excited to see what it looks like. Obviously, anytime you have a new staff, hope springs eternal. But I do think they've done all the right things, and it's early, but they've said all the right things. I really like this staff. I like the decision to go with offense. You guys in the chat obviously have been hearing us clamor for offense. I am interested. I know Keenan was more of a defensive guy. He was thinking maybe the defensive coach was the way to go. What was your preference, or did you have one, Will, going into this whole hiring process?
I had kind of Joe Brady and Arthur Smith as my 1A, 1B. Just because I think Joe Brady is going to be a head coach in this league eventually. I think that I like the fact that he learned under Sean Payton, because as much as we all hate the Saints. I still have the utmost respect for Sean Payton as a football kind of mind. Reading the number of kind of Peter King stories where it's a Saturday and Sean Payton's still kind of throwing stuff into the playbook and they're running kind of like scout team walkthroughs in a random conference room and just kind of like putting in new wrinkles. I think that that's the type of weird obsessive level that you have to really succeed in the NFL. And I read a story, I think it was Charlotte Observer, where Joe Brady, if he writes something on a piece of paper and he doesn't like the way his handwriting is on kind of like the first word of the first sentence, he just like crumples up the paper and throws it away. And that is neurotic as hell. Yes. And that is what I want in somebody who's kind of coming up with offensive plays. Now that either goes horribly wrong or that works if you kind of get somebody if you get a staff that's as attentive to detail as you are and are willing to put in that amount of hours. I think Joe Brady will be a head coach. I think he'll be a pretty good head coach in this league. But also I saw Arthur Smith and I think what he did with Ryan Tannehill and Derrick Henry and the receivers, as somebody who drafted Corey Davis for like 2 years in fantasy and just had some disappointing results. And then all of a sudden Arthur Smith kind of steps in after, Matt LaFleur, who has gone on to have great success in Green Bay. Arthur Smith took that offense to, frankly, an entirely different level than it even was under LaFleur.
Drastically better.
Yes, he was kind of staying along with what LaFleur did. But I think that when he speaks, about utilizing the players that he has at his disposal in the best possible ways, that's kind of the job of an offensive coordinator. We get so caught up in the play calls, in-game play calling and things like that. Like that's a big part of it, but really those play calls are just meant to accentuate the players that you have at your disposal, and you're trying to set them up to utilize it at just the right time. That Calvin Ridley can run a fantastic 20-yard out route. So you're trying to set up a play to the point in the game where you can utilize that to its most maximum effect. And I think that if Arthur Smith knows exactly what his players can do, then he'll be able to utilize that. And I think we saw that in Tennessee, especially in the red zone. I mean, I think that is never more important than in the red zone, knowing what your guys are best at, because you only have a handful of chances at the goal line to get the ball in. So you need to know my guys can do this at an 80% clip and call that. And they had incredible success in the red zone under Arthur Smith. I do think, probably Keenan, to your point, Robert Saleh, was he your guy on defense? Is that who you liked?
Yeah.
Because I heard great things. I heard
Saleh.
Great things about Robert Saleh.
I just didn't want to go back to. I didn't want to go back to another. I didn't want to go back to another offensive coach. Like I wanted a defense. That was just me, my personal opinion.
I think you maybe were scarred, with the Petrino situation.
You may have told this before, Keenan. Do you have a Petrino story? I need a Petrino story on here.
You need a Petrino story, man. Yeah. The other day, I just found that letter that he left in our lockers when he peaced out on us.
No way.
Yeah. You need to frame it.
Yeah.
No, you need to.
That's like Falcons history.
It is. Hold on, I might can find that thing, man.
We are witnessing Falcons history live, folks.
You should frame that.
Here's a Petrino story. There was one time we had a preseason game on a Friday, and he gave us Saturday off and told us we was going to be off on Sunday, right? Well, it's full padded practice on Sunday, and nobody was happy about it, right? And so D'Angelo Hall at the time, he had a shirt and he wrote on there, Petrino, this is bullshit, and had his pads up and walked around the whole practice. I was over there.
My favorite game from that season, I think it was maybe 3 or 4 games left. When D'Angelo Hall had 45 yards of penalties and 3 straight plays going against the Panthers and Steve Smith. You remember that game?
Yeah.
I remember. I was like, all right, D'Angelo.
Was that year, or was that the year before? I thought that might have been the year before.
I thought that was Petrino. I thought that was Petrino's year. Because I think D'Angelo was gone the next year. But it was just kind of like
he got in his head a little bit that day, man.
He was fed up. I mean, I think it was Petrino was probably in his head, and then Steve got in his head.
Yeah, I tell you what, man, Petrino, let's stop talking about Petrino because I was in a good mood and.
Oh, okay, sorry. Yeah, don't want to ruin your evening. Yeah.
No,
That's
good.
funny. That's funny though with the letter. That's crazy.
That tick that Keenan has is going to start now because
every time you remind him of Petrino. Yeah.
Well, I mean that's the difference between the NFL coach and a college coach. Like college coaches can pull that bullshit because, I mean, what are college kids going to do? But I mean, when you tell, like, a lot of these guys on teams have families. A lot of guys on these teams, their families might live somewhere else. Yeah. Maybe they're thinking, I got the weekend, I can fly back and see my kid.
Yeah.
And then your coach all of a sudden is like, all right, nope, Sunday, full padded practice. Now, this might have been training camp or whatever, but yeah, like, you got to respect the guys in your locker room if you're NFL.
These are grown-ass adults. Like,
it was just one of those things that you kind of saw from the beginning that he wasn't about his word. Like, you say one thing, and then all of a sudden now you're saying something else, you know? Right. And well, it's not like we don't. It's not like we don't want to work because that's what we get paid to do. We come to training camp to practice, right?
But just shoot it straight.
Say something. You got to stick with that with ball players. Like, hey, y'all got this day off. Everybody's like working to that, because it's tough. And it's not like what they were doing, what they're doing now, where they practice once a day and then go out there in their hats and touch each other up. No, it's 2 days, full metal jacket, hit it and get it. So you tell us we're getting this day off. Be about your word, and then after a while, we started seeing more stuff that he was just not about his word. And then, of course, the infamous telling Mr. Blank, yeah, I'm your coach next year. And then peaced out. He's doing pig sui,
Just like Will said, he was pretty much setting it up for later on down the line.
Oh
yeah. Looking back on it now, of course, that was an omen. But of course, at that point,
red flags was there. We was all acting like we didn't want to see it. It's funny because the kids that we had on the team that went to Louisville and played with him, they was laughing at us. They was like, "Man, y'all just don't know how Coach P is." It's like, man.
Good Lord,
that's wild, man. Yeah.
Oh, man. I can't believe you sent that letter, man. I all these years.
Should have a ceremony to burn it or something.
That's what they do at AA.
Yeah, that's great though. I do appreciate you dredging up those painful memories.
It's bad history, but it's still everybody knows of the letter.
Yeah.
I wonder how many other ones actually still exist.
Right.
It is bad history, man, but it still resonates with fans to this day. They don't want college coaches. They don't even want you to mention a college coach to this day. I remember I think it was last year, the year before last, where I started throwing around the idea of maybe Lincoln Riley.
You started that rumor, Eric? That was you.
I think it was him. Yeah.
But I just looked at it like, okay, the NFL as a whole is trending towards getting those young, offensive, head coaches, those innovative guys. And I'm like, well, Lincoln Riley could be next in line. And man, he's a college coach. He reminds us of we're never used to college coach. I'm like, come on, guys. We got to be over that. I mean, I get it. I'm upset too.
The only way the NFL is becoming more like college is schematically on the field.
Yeah.
Yep. The two have never been more different off of the field because college coaches have never had more power. Mm-hmm. And that really hasn't changed in the NFL. The NFL is still a job. You come, they say, do your job. They expect you to be professional. You come in, you give your all and everything you've got. You go home at the end of the day.
Yeah.
You come back the next day, do the same thing again, go home. Your own time is your own time. All of that stuff. College teams, they can have these kids in meetings from sun up to sundown and doing that stuff. And they can control their life because they're trying to keep them out of trouble because these are 20-year-old kids. These are 18-year-old kids with college ladies and bars and all that stuff. And they're just trying to keep them from messing up.
Yeah.
The NFL, you've got to have a mutual level of respect. Hey, you're going to give it your all. I'm going to give it my all. We're going to go out there on Sunday. We're going to see what that gets us. And then there are families in the mix, and you've got guys who are, 30, 6 years old like Matt Ryan, who has 2 sons and a wife, and just you're trying to get him to relate to a 22-year-old AJ Terrell. And those guys probably don't have very much in common, but they do the same job because they're part of the team and they're professionals. So
it's interesting you said that, because you look back at a lot of college coaches that make the transition. That's pretty much where Steve Spurrier tripped up as a head coach.
It's where a lot of them. Nick Saban tripped up. I mean, it's
bringing that college mentality as a head coach over to the NFL, and it's an eye opener for a lot of guys. But I still think eventually it's still going to be somewhat of a trendy thing for NFL teams to say, all right, you know what, let's start plucking some of these guys. I see it slowly building up, at least. I mean, but I also see nowadays, teams are not as reluctant as years past to give super young head coaches or super young coaches an opportunity. I mean, Joe Brady, for example, I'm a huge Joe Brady fan, but if this was 15 years ago, do you guys really think a coach like Joe Brady would have gotten a head coaching interview, let alone several on the trail? Like I don't.
Yeah, no, because the game wasn't where it is now, and because you weren't seeing it. The game, the NFL, again, schematically, the game has never been kind of closer to the college system, which I think is a credit to a lot of these coaches, because the benefit of that is better success early on for quarterbacks, the most important position on the field. And so if you're doing things that the quarterbacks are comfortable with early on and allow them to grow and evolve and learn more things and kind of transition, that's ultimately better. But I think like Joe Brady, what's important is he cut his teeth in the NFL. He learned with Sean Payton. He went to college and had crazy success and then came back and, did it again in Carolina, and he did it without Christian McCaffrey. I'm actually very bullish on the Panthers next year offensively, because their best weapon wasn't on the field. And what these teams will do is spend an entire offseason trying to get a leg up on everything that they saw this past year defensively.
Not only did it without,
nobody knows what Carolina is going to look like with a healthy Christian McCaffrey. So I think the offense there is going to be pretty dynamic next year.
Not only did it without Christian, but Curtis Samuel ended up having a career year.
Robbie Anderson.
Robbie Anderson was great pickup there. Yeah.
And Bridgewater almost passed for 4,000 yards. I think it was a little bit over 3,700 yards. So he was able to take his scheme and work with what he had. And it wasn't one of the more flashy offenses in the league, but when you just look at it from a wider scope, like, man, he did a really good job, this past year.
And Matt Rule is actually very interesting in this conversation we're having, because he's a longtime college coach. But I think what he did is smart, and kind of what we're talking about with Arthur Smith is he necessarily didn't surround himself with like old coaches, but with guys who have been in the NFL for a while.
Yep.
And he's probably smart enough, and I was fortunate enough to kind of talk to him a couple times this season, but I think he's very well aware of what it takes to kind of win and create a winning culture in the NFL separate from college. So I don't know. Yeah. Sorry to turn this into a Carolina Panthers podcast.
No. I mean, I look back when Fontenot was first announced as like a contender for the GM role, like it was Fontenot Brady. That's a pairing, and I think a lot of us were pretty in on that. Like, yeah, that sounds cool. Like, that sounds like a good coaching tandem. And then Arthur Smith seemed to gain steam after the second interview. But I think I speak for a lot of fans on here, a lot of our chat. I mean, Joe Brady, I think people would have been very excited about. I think just a lot of us were very much like, we need an offensive coach. We need to stop having, anytime it goes good, for Matt Ryan's offensive coordinator to be stolen and having to start over again. And then just having a defensive head coach and the defense isn't good. Like, it's just so frustrating. It's like, oh, we're going to get that defensive head coach and the defense still sucks. So it's like, do you really need a defensive head coach to have a good defense? The answer is no. So
I got a question for you real quickly. Yeah. Let's say hypothetically the Titans were preparing to play Sunday in the Super Bowl. Would the Falcons vacancy what's the likelihood of the Falcons vacancy possibly still be opening now if that's the case? Or would if they went ahead and went the Joe Brady route by this point?
they'd have hired Eric Bieniemy long ago. No, I'm just kidding. No, I think there's a decent chance that we're sitting here just knowing that they've zeroed in on Arthur Smith. That it's kind of like where the 49ers were with Kyle Shanahan when we went to the Super Bowl, and it was like, well, there's one vacancy left, and there's been one candidate strongly connected to this one vacancy for about 4 weeks. So like draw the line, kind of the way it was with Fontenot for a little bit, where it seemed like reports were out there that the Falcons like Fontenot, the Falcons like Brad Holmes, the Falcons like, these guys, and then Brad Holmes takes, the Lions job and all of that. And it was kind of like, all right, just kind of fit the square peg in the square hole. So I think that's probably where we would have been had the Titans. And I mean, I think that's a testament again to Arthur Smith, though, that it's not long ago that the Titans were Marcus Mariota and kind of being 9-7 and maybe getting into the playoffs, and Marcus Mariota having to throw his body in front of a defender to even get like somebody else a touchdown. And then they lost a 13-17 game. But now they're sitting here, and Arthur Smith got every little bit out of that Titans offense, a Titans offense that really hasn't changed personnel a ton, but has changed their production massively. So if I'm trying to be bullish on what Arthur Smith can do now, being a head coach is a little bit of a different animal. His ability to delegate is going to be important. His ability to know when to pick and choose what he can really put his hands on, how hard to push his guys, things like that. That's probably a little bit new to him, but I think Arthur Smith is a very smart guy, and I think he could probably handle this job.
Yeah. Yeah, it does remind me a little bit of the Dan Quinn situation too, because I think the Falcons had to wait for him in 2015 as well. So yeah, I agree with what you're saying. Well, I don't think it would have affected anything if he was still in the playoffs.
I'm curious, did you hear any rumors of like who the runner-up might have been? I know like they spoke to like Nathaniel Hackett and some other guys. Like, was Arthur Smith pretty much it once he started interviewing with them?
I think that the context clues probably point to Arthur Smith being their number one guy. I mean, that's certainly what Arthur blank. Now I guess I have to find which one. That's definitely what he said on the opening press conference, was that they got their number one guy. And I think if you look at the fact that Arthur interviewed at a number of places, and I was told that was because Arthur wanted to honor his commitment to kind of the other organizations that he had already said, I'd love to interview there. And that he wanted to kind of stick to his word, wanted to go there. So I think that Arthur was probably their top guy. Now, who might have been their backup, I have no idea. I have no information on that. Based on the reporting of others, like it seems like Joe Brady was in the mix. Later on, I think he at least got that second interview.
He did.
So yeah, I think those guys. I don't know if Nathaniel Hackett was super in there. Obviously, Brian Dable never got an interview.
Interesting.
The enemy got a look. Saleh got a look. Those guys, Raheem got a look. But I think it probably was down to Arthur Smith and Joe Brady.
Yeah,
and I think Arthur Smith was just kind of their number one guy.
Yeah, that was the vibe I got too. That Joe Brady was certainly on the table if Arthur Smith had happened to maybe go elsewhere or make some other decision, but that Arthur Smith seemed to be, he took kind of a clear lead after the second interview. So, but there was all those reports from Joe Brady, like, oh, Joe Brady's super confident that he's going to get the Falcons job. So that was a fun saga. It always is fun. We're on the carousel there, but excited for the new staff. I think they've got a lot of potential. I like how it's coming together. So great stuff there. Well, guys, we've gone for an hour and 40 minutes of Falcons talk in the dead of the offseason with literally nothing going on. So, I mean, I think that's a feat. And I owe it all to our excellent co-hosts and guests, because this was a great show with a lot of great content. So thank you, guys. Speaking of, first of all, I want to thank Will Mcfadden for coming on. I think this was your first episode, Will. He's at Will Mcfadden on Twitter. Will, anything that you're working on, anything you want to plug?
No, I'm a free agent. So if anybody's hiring out there, hit me up.
Yeah, hit up Will, guys. Clearly this man knows his stuff, knows Falcons, knows football. Great guy. Former Falcoholic alum as well. So
You're not gonna be afraid for long.
I hope not. I'm thinking about in the meantime maybe starting like a newsletter or something, and just keep staying writing. Maybe start doing some because I always like to do some draft breakdowns, which I'm upset that this kind of disrupted. I started watching a little Zach Wilson film today. I always have a spreadsheet, so maybe I'll start doing kind of like a couple times a week. Like here's some prospect thoughts. Maybe Monday I'll start with like 10 thoughts on the Super Bowl. But TBD. Cool. And if you're hiring out there, hit me up.
Hit up Will, guys. Hit up Will for real. Also with us tonight, Keenan Forney. He's at KForney65. Also F65 Performance on Instagram. Keenan, thanks for coming on. Anything that you want to plug? Anything you want to let the people know about?
I want to say congratulations to Dason Renew, kid that I've been training the past 3-4 years. He just signed to St. Anselm College. If anybody deserves, you know what I mean, to get a scholarship, it's him, because he always did the requirement and he always did a little bit more. And it's just great to see when guys, you know, set a goal, work for it, and then they achieve it. You know what I mean? Because he's a young man, and that's just going to help him going forward in life. You know what I mean? When you get a little bit of success, it just sets you up for your next success. You know what I'm saying? So congratulations to Dason. And also, too, for any of you other young offensive linemen out there, you want to get coached up, you want to get your fundamentals better, holla at your boy on F65 Performance on Instagram, KForney65 on Twitter. And before I let y'all go, I found that infamous letter.
Oh my God. That's amazing.
Fist pump, right?
Wow. Out of my respect,
man, just literally
Falcons history right there.
Just like one paragraph, double space too. Wow.
Yeah.
Man,
is that real ink or is that printed?
No, you know, he made one copy and passed it around.
He didn't even sign it.
Oh man.
Can y'all see that? Can you read it?
Yeah. Wow. That's crazy,
while my desire would have been to finish out would have been a difficult season for us all, circumstances did not allow me to do so.
Wow.
What circumstances, man?
What circumstances? The fact that you suck.
Arkansas wasn't going to wait 3 weeks.
The circumstance was that Mike Vick was gone and he was stuck with Joey. That's what it was. He didn't want none of that action.
Yeah. Wow. That's amazing. I don't think I've ever seen the text of that letter. So
that's actually, that's history right there.
That's history, man. That's crazy.
Is that history that Falcons,
it is.
It's Falcons history. It's not proud history, but it is history. So.
Well, we're all aware of the letter, but like nobody really knows what it says because it's like in the videos, it's people crumbling it up and tossing it or whatever.
Right. I remember Malloy doing that.
Yeah,
that's
wild.
I just remember Mike Zimmer going off on the what he said about him being I have to look it up. About being a son of a bitch or something.
It was a wild staff though. There were some future head coaches on that coaching staff. I mean, Mike Zimmer was there. Somebody was on the offensive side, but there were like 3 or 4 head coaches on that staff.
Hugh Jackson.
There you go. Yep.
That is right. I remember catching a glimpse of it on camera before and noticing, like, man, that letter's kind of short. That's more, and you just submitted that for him. It's really like a paragraph, like that. You couldn't even give him a full page letter, man. Like that's.
He didn't even write it. Comps team wrote it.
No, not his comps team wrote that.
Yeah. Miss Brenda Johnson, the secretary. He probably told her to come up with something for him.
Miss B, I wrote a story when she left the Falcons.
You know Miss B, great lady. Yeah. I love that woman.
Miss B's great. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
But Keenan, I know this is our first time ever talking, but I'm sure like everybody else on this call grew up watching you play, so nothing but the respect and really enjoyed this conversation with you.
Oh yeah, I appreciate it, Will. Hey, and I like some of the articles you wrote on, the website too, man.
Oh, well, thank you.
Yeah,
yes, we'll be greatly missed. We'll be greatly missed.
Because I think you wrote one about the draft classes, going over the draft class over the years, right?
Probably.
It might have been a year ago. I remember that. Like it kind of a flashback on the top draft classes, I believe.
Oh yeah. I remember that.
Sir.
Yeah,
I love what you said, man. When you man, boy, hey, I'm glad that we talking, man. Hey,
there you go.
I read that. I was like,
and the Michael Vick the Superman dive against Panthers in 2004.
Yep.
I did a whole deep dive on that because I was actually at that game, one of my favorite sports memories, but just to send it into overtime and then win that game, go clinch the number one first round bye, I think.
Yeah.
They lost the next day. Yeah.
I just rewatched that game the other day on YouTube. There's a full game that's actually on YouTube, and I'm just hearing Mike Patrick and Joe Theismann just, in awe of seeing make that.
Hey, and a little disclosure. There was one time on there that Joe tried to talk shit about me, saying that I gave up the sack. No, it wasn't on me. It was slide right, so you figure out who it was on.
You got a letter from Joe? Got a letter from Joe you gonna hold up?
I do not accept responsibility for this sack.
Throw nobody under the bus.
Well, I would have loved for you to not give up that sack. I unfortunately could not be here to witness it.
I could not be here, to call into question this off. Yeah. But no, thank you both for coming on. That was fantastic. I'm sure.
Hey, I'd love to get that article, Will. I'd love to read that again if you got it.
I'll shoot it over to you.
Heck yes, we will facilitate that. But again, thank you guys so much. Great show. Also want to thank the co-hosts tonight. First of all, Evan Birchfield at Evan Birchfield on Twitter. Anything you're working on you want to let the people know about, Evan?
Yeah, I have an interview with Foya Luakan coming out tomorrow, the next day or something. But overall, I just appreciate, Will being here and Keenan. This was great conversation. Like I felt like I was in the front row. Like I didn't want to talk. I just wanted to keep listening to everybody.
Right.
That was good conversation. But hopefully, Will, before you find something, I know Kevin would love to have you back on.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Hey, I'm free
every Wednesday. So
yeah, I mean, honestly, I feel like this is like the least I've talked in an episode in like over a year. So that's fine for me. Like I can like sit back, a little bit. Yeah. So that's cool. But yeah, thank you, Evan, as well. Definitely check out that Foye interview. I know we're going to be maybe trying to get Foye to come on here at some point too. So we'll see. We'll see how that goes. We're getting the the wheels rolling there. We'll see. But, also with us, Eric Robinson at _Eric_Robinson on Twitter. Eric was at the Senior Bowl. I know he's got stuff working for the draft. I think he's got a mock draft on tap. Anything you want to plug, Eric, as well?
Definitely, working on my mock draft this week. Should have it finished either tomorrow or maybe Friday. Also, with no combine, I usually start my scouting reports around combine time, but no combine, so I'm probably going to dive in that a little bit early. So
yeah,
be on the look out for those. I've watched plenty of Parsons and Kwity Paye, so I think I'm going to get started on those guys first. So
sounds good. Excellent stuff. Guys, again, thank you all for tuning in, sticking with us for this very long episode. If you haven't already, please do like the video. That helps other folks find it on the YouTubes. And also subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I am Kevin Knight, at Falcoholic Kevin on Twitter. I will be putting out another video on Friday. It's going to be looking at another free agency group for the Falcons. Sneak preview to those that actually watch this episode. It will be the offensive line, so I'll be looking at some guards and centers, maybe even a tackle in there to get spicy, But yeah, look for that on Friday.
Oh, man.
So yeah, it just there's a lot of offensive line.
Talk dirty to me.
I know. Keenan's gonna be all about that offensive line episode. I can tell. So. But yeah, guys, check that out. Follow the show on Twitter at Falcoholic Live if you're interested in supporting the show. Getting some exclusive perks. You can check us out on Patreon. That is patreon.com/Falcoholic Live. Check out our Discord. And otherwise, guys, we will see you again next Wednesday. Do enjoy the Super Bowl on Sunday. Should be a great game. And we will talk to you guys next week. So once again, thanks to all of our co-hosts and guests, and thanks to all of you guys for tuning in with us tonight. We will see you guys next week. Have a great one.
Thank you, Kevin.